Hi guys, welcome back to Mr. Ferris Science Classroom. This video is for NTI number 15 for April the 21st. This instructions is for the week of April 20th through the 24th. Your NTI instructions for Tuesday are to use the video lesson, PowerPoint information, text reading to complete this week's assignments. Tuesday, for this video, the article, Interactions of Living Things, you must read that article, complete the After You Read section, and there is also a Lesson 1 graphic organizer entitled Ecosystems and Biomes. Please remember to take a picture of your work, send it to me. You can drop it off at school with the rest of your work on Friday if you need to. Let's get started. We are starting a new unit today, which is going to be about ecosystems and biomes. We're going to take this information that we've learned, probably from stuff that you've learned in 4th grade, maybe even in 3rd grade, to be able to put together and do a little review on what it is that makes up an ecosystem. You have 2 attached handouts. One is the article that says the interaction of living things, and then there is a graphic organizer that will be entitled NTI Graphic Organizer Lesson 1. So let's get started. The vocabulary for this unit, or part of this unit I should say, is ecosystem, abiotic factor, biotic factor, population, community, biome, and succession. So as we go through Lesson 1, these key words will also be in the article and bolded in the PowerPoint slides. So what exactly is an ecosystem? Well, ecology, if you want to be an ecologist, they study how organisms interact with each other and with their environments. Every organism on Earth lives in an ecosystem. An ecosystem is defined as the living and non-living things in one place. That ecosystem could be your front yard, could be around a barn on a farm, could be in your garden, it could be a pond out back or stream or a river, it could be a desert, it could be the tundra, it could be Antarctica around the coast area. But that is an ecosystem that we talk about. And we talked about those last week in the biomes as well. But different organisms depend on different parts of the ecosystem to survive. So what are those parts? The first one is the abiotic factors. Abiotic means the non-living parts of an ecosystem. So these are the things that aren't living. We're not talking about plants and animals here. We're talking about the other things in an ecosystem. What are those other things? They include water, light, temperature, atmosphere, and soil. The different types and amount of these factors determine what can live in an ecosystem. Well, that makes sense, right? If you're living in a rainforest, there's certain adaptations and certain plants that can live in a rainforest that can't live in a desert. There are certain things, certain animals that can live in the desert because of those adaptations that can't live in a rainforest. So those things can happen pretty easily, and you've seen those a lot. If you've been to the zoo, they always tell you where the animal lives and what its natural habitat is. That's where the ecosystem it comes from. All organisms need water to live. Some need more water than others. Obviously, a whale needs a lot of water to live in. A camel needs very little water because it can store the water in its hump and it can be able to use that as it travels across the desert. An elephant, on the other hand, doesn't have that hump, so it could not travel in the desert because it needs lots of water, it needs lots of food to eat, and it would be able to, it would run out of food, it would run out of water in the desert, so it would not be able to use it. The amount of light and temperature of an ecosystem can also determine what can live there. We've talked about that a lot because where the sunlight is, that's where the plants can grow. How much temperature is there? Is there 4 seasons or is there just 2 seasons? You know, is there a lot of different in temperature night and day like in the desert? It's extremely hot in the daytime, extremely cold at night. Can animals live there? Different ecosystems contain soils, and that soils have different amounts of nutrients and minerals and rocks in the sand, in the soil. For example, a desert has real sandy soil. That sandy soil is not good for trying to grow stuff. That's why you don't see a lot of plants growing in the desert, because there's nowhere for the roots, there's no water. But if you go outside and dig up your small part of your backyard, the dirt around here in Kentucky is really dark and rich, and it kind of smells really earthy, and it has that those nutrients and minerals in it that make it real good for gardening. Oxygen in the atmosphere is another thing. We have oxygen, and it is a critical component of all living animals, but it's also a critical component in making of water, H2O. Water has oxygen, and since we have an abundance of oxygen here on Earth, we have a breathable atmosphere, and we have water. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water, just like 70% of your body is made up of water in the fibers of your muscles, of your tissue, of the blood in your body. That's what we need water for, and that oxygen allows that water to exist. Now, we also know that photosynthesis, plants absorb our carbon dioxide, and then they give off oxygen as a byproduct or a waste of that photosynthesis. Now, the biotic factors. These are the living or once living things in an ecosystem. A population is one part of that biotic factor that we count. It is all the members of one species that live in an area. So if you had a forest in your backyard and you wanted to count all of the maple trees, you would go through your forest and you would count and do it in a way that you don't miss any of it, but you would count only the maple trees. You wouldn't count the oak trees. You wouldn't count the pine trees. You would count just the oak trees. And if you wanted to do squirrels, you may count all the squirrels. Then you might change and say, well, I want to do just the red squirrels versus the brown squirrels, if you have a lot of squirrels in your forest or in the back of your house. All of these populations in an area, all of them, whether it be the squirrels or the foxes or the rabbits or whatever, they compete for food, they compete for shelter, which is a place to live, and they compete for other animals to reproduce with so that they can be able to sustain their population. And we put all those populations together in one place called a community. So we would count in a forest in your backyard, we'd count a community of we would take the total number of rabbits, we take the total number of snakes, we take the total number of frogs or whatever live back there, and we'd say this is how many living organisms there are in this community. The word community means fellowship. That means they work together. Even in a predator situation where one animal eats the other one, that is working together as part of that ecosystem. A biome you talked about last week. Biome is a large area that has a specific climate, physical features, plants, and other organisms. Biomes contain ecosystems, populations, and communities. It's the largest area. If you're looking about on Earth, a biome is the big area. The ecosystems are smaller areas within that area. Then there's the communities, then there's the populations, then you get down to the specific biotic and abiotic factors. So it keeps getting from bigger down to smaller. All biomes are part of the biosphere, and that's the entire part of the earth, both the terrestrial, which is the land, and the aquatic, which is the water. Now, on yours that you did last week, they broke down the forest, they broke down the grasslands, but then they didn't have the fresh water and the salt water, which those two biomes are very important as well. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more as we go through this unit. Terrestrial means land, aquatic means water. The terrestrial biomes include the forests, which would be it could be the taiga, it could be the rainforest, it could be the deciduous forest, like where we live at now, where the leaves change color and fall off. It could be the deserts, the tundra, or the grasslands. The aquatic biomes include the saltwater areas, oceans and seas, fresh water that can be an aquarium, in your house could be fresh water or salt water. That's its own little biome or ecosystem. It could be a pond, lake, stream, river. It could be fresh water. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at the aquatic biomes. Biomes, like communities, can affect each other. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as we go through these lessons, especially when we start talking about food chains and food webs and how these species work together. Now, change can happen in an environment. It can happen really quickly, or it can happen very slowly. It can be caused by natural processes, or it can be caused by human actions. Changes in the environment can have both positive and negative effects. Something can happen really quickly, like a flood. It could change an ecosystem because it washes away the topsoil. Then a farmer can't grow his crops. It could be positive. There could be a change in the weather patterns, and over time those weather patterns have allowed crops to grow in a certain area, or you can take a once area that was a forest, and if you use the wood and you turn it into a farm area, kind of like what we've done in Kentucky. We grow a lot of crops here in Kentucky because that's a positive change that we've made. Volcanic eruptions can cause a sudden change in ecosystem. And so we're going to talk about one of those, which is Mount St. Helens. And we're going to see that as an example. I'll show you a video of that. But succession is the vocabulary word for this lesson that you need to know. It is the gradual change from one community to another community. So in Kentucky, we take areas that are forest. We can clear them off. We can take them and turn those cleared off areas into fields where we can grow crops. We can graze cattle. We can be able to raise horses. We can build schools. The property we built this school on was a farm. So we changed the area. We no longer are growing corn here. We're growing minds and stimulating intellect here and being able to have that educational system here. So that's how we're changing this ground. I hope you guys enjoyed this time, and I hope that it helped you realize what you need to do. Please look at the attachments that I put on here for your assignments so that you will be able to know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Thank you.